Pokemon trading card game by getting that win in 2017. Zach Lesage, of course, an incredibly strong player, getting a second place finish at Oceania Internationals, a top 8 finish at the Latin America Internationals, also a regionals win in 2019, and then of course Players Cup 2 champion with that Pikachu and Zekrom deck. And Zach was really kind of the first player to introduce the Mewtwo and Mew into Pikachu and Zekrom decks, which kind of became the norm for months to come after that tournament.
Yep, the era of Mewtwo and Mew GX and Crushing Hammer kind of started there. But we thought it would never happen. Pikachu and Zekrom seems to have finally faded away from the standard format. And now Zach is going to go with a new deck, Ice Rider, Calyrex VMAX plus Inteleon. We haven't seen this one yet in a Players' Cup, but it is also a strong choice. And Diego going with the other version of Calyrex, the Shadow Rider, and pairing it up with that interesting tech card, Solgaleo and Lunala GX.
Definitely not a card I would have expected to see coming into this tournament, but a pretty strong option. Cosmic Burn, I believe the attack dealing 230 damage. Just so much damage that can really help you pick up KOs in a pinch for 4 energy, where usually something like Max Geist requires you to have a ton of energy in play to be hitting for those kind of numbers. But I'm excited, Kyle. We're going to go ahead and get down to the table, see who's going to win this ever important opening coin flip. And this is a very important coin flip because both of these players really badly want to go first.
Yeah, it's been interesting to see this kind of progression in the standard format. You know, when Sword and Shield came out, there was that rule change where you can't play a supporter card on your first turn if you go first. And there was debate for a long time. Is it better to go first? Is it better to go second? And I think when you see tag team Pokemon be the dominant ones, going second sometimes feels better because you can attack faster. But now that we've kind of shifted towards Pokemon VMAX and evolving, it seems pretty clear that going first is an advantage again.
Absolutely. And Diego does have that tag team Gengar and Mimikyu in the deck, which is a key option if you do ever find yourself going second. Similar to that Iron Rule GX we saw from Natalie in round number 1, Horror House GX has very often bought players the turns they need to just absolutely pop off and have incredible turns. And right away, Diego has a ton of search cards in hand to get a field full of Shadow Rider Calyrex V, which is exactly what you want to find on turn 1 with this deck.
Yeah, this looks like an excellent start for Diego. And yeah, you mentioned the Gengar and Mimikyu GX. It does have that Horror House GX that you can use for 1 Psychic Energy. It prevents your opponent from playing any cards from their hand on the next turn. But I feel like a lot of the time you really want to go for the second effect. You want to get that bonus where you get 2 energy to Gengar and Mimikyu GX. In this matchup, though, I think Gengar and Mimikyu is a liability. Max Lance from Ice Rider Calyrex VMAX can knock it out very easily, so sometimes it is just 3 prize cards you're giving to your opponent, and Diego might want to go just for old Shadow Rider Calyrex VMAX in this matchup.
Definitely. It's something I've definitely lost some games to by using that card in this specific matchup because it is just a pretty easy 3 prize swing. Diego here does have to put the Dene GX in play and is filling the bench up pretty heavily, which is just going to kind of happen. You want to get a bunch of Pokemon in play, but that is going to boost damage from Zach's Ride of the High King later on in this game.
Yeah, there's really not a lot you can do about it, though. I mean, in this deck, you need a bunch of Shadow Rider Calyrex VMAX on your bench. So you kind of have to fill your bench, right? It's not like, oh, I can only put 1 into play. It's like when you had Zoroark GX, right? You wanted as many in play as possible so you could keep trading.
Zach's going to kick things off with a Capacious Bucket. Excellent card for these Ice Rider decks, getting you 2 water energy out of the deck. Kind of a cross between, you know, Energy Spinner and Energy Search, both cards that, you know, players will play in their decks from time to time, but just a lot stronger in these water type decks specifically, especially with that new Melanie supporter out of Chilling Reign.
Definitely. Capacious Bucket. Obviously, a very strong card. We had Professor's Letter in the standard format for quite a while, but limited to water Pokemon, basically, right? It only grabs water energy, but still a very strong card. Anytime an item card can grab 2 basic energy cards, that's exactly what you're looking for.
We're going to see quick ball played, and there's the first Ice Rider to come into play. Kind of an interesting, dynamic between these two decks where Diego wants to fill the bench with a ton of his Calyrex V. Zach really only needs to get 1 or 2 in play at a time and just try, work with this first one and then can bench the second one a little later on. Can afford to play the game a little slower, and oh no, Kyle, this hand here off of Marnie is not good at all for Zach Lesage.
Yeah, we do see Path to the Peak, though, which is a very important card against this Shadow Rider Calyrex VMAX deck, disabling all those abilities on the Shadow Rider VMAX. We are seeing a lot more players use that Marshadow with the Resetting Hole ability to kind of deal with that. But Zach plays a lot of Path to the Peak, and eventually one of those is probably going to stick, and sometimes that's the difference in the matchup.
We are going to see Diego is able to retreat to the bench with the Air Balloon, and Resetting Hole will bump that Path to the Peak. Now, Diego will have the option to evolve and use Underworld Door to draw cards. And this ability, Kyle, is just so incredibly strong. When you look at the history of the Pokemon trading card game, consistently the strongest abilities are the ones that let you draw cards or let you accelerate energy. And Underworld Door does both.
Why not both? Yeah. So we are going to see Zach does get bailed out a bit by Diego having to play Marnie. There's no way that he could know his opponent's hand was that bad, but it was. But now Zach gets just as bad of a hand.
Yeah, it's kind of like a sigh of relief. Oh, thank goodness my opponent plays a Marnie. Oh no, my hand is just as bad as it was before. I guess this hand, at least Zach has the option to potentially attack with, if this active goes down, but it does look like Diego is not going to be able to get this KO here.
Yeah, Diego does have an awkward hand, though. He does have triple Shadow Rider Calyrex VMAX, but no energy, so can't use Underworld Door. Has to put down a second Dedenne GX. But, that's probably okay. It still makes it so that, your opponent has to get through to, I guess it makes it easier to win, but they still have to get through at least one Shadow Rider Calyrex VMAX.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's easier to knock out a Dedenne than a Shadow Rider, obviously, but
a little bit, yeah.
If Zach can just, 2-hit KO 2 VMAXs, it's kind of the same thing as 2-hit KOing 1 VMAX and then having to 1-hit KO 2 Dedennes. So it almost works out to the same number of attacks anyway.
Yep, but we're not going to see an attack from Zach on this second turn. It looks like, one of the peaks of playing this Ice Rider Calyrex VMAX deck is that it's pretty straightforward and consistent, right? All you need to do is evolve into it. It needs 2 energy. It's very similar to Victini VMAX in that way. It's pretty easy to get an attack off on turn 2. And when you don't get it, you just lose so much momentum. And just look at this game. Diego's got 3 VMAX in play, a bunch of energy. And Zach's got Sobble.
Go Sobble up against this Shadow Rider Calyrex VMAX. Not quite going to work out well for Zach if he doesn't find something here. And Diego eyeing up maybe a boss's orders here. And I think that's why we saw Zach actually not go ahead and evolve one of these Vs into VMAXs, because that would give Diego a target here to try to just go ahead and 2-hit KO a VMAX.
Yeah, it's an interesting choice. You could just boss's orders and say, okay, I'm not getting any prized cards here, but you can never really evolve this one. And it kind of makes it so they wasted an energy attachment there. And if they do ever have to evolve into the VMAX, well, you're just going to take 3 prize cards on it later. Diego valuing just, getting rid of Sobble. I think it's also a very reasonable play. You get a prize card. You also reduce the number of potential Drizzile that come into play, which then, of course, turn into a Teleon, which can really reduce the amount of searching your opponent's able to do. So
Speaking of the Drizzile, huge top deck for Zach Lesage, able to find the level ball and get that Drizzile out right away. Shady Dealings finds the Marnie, will disrupt Diego's huge hand, and also find more cards for Zach. And Zach, you know, like you said, this deck is pretty straightforward and honestly pretty low maintenance. You just need to find energy once you get your Pokemon in play pretty much. And Zach has got that pretty well lined up with the Melanie in hand as well for the next turn. Looking pretty solid, honestly, after a rough start.
Yeah, I think a big draw to this deck is that Path to the Peak. It's one of the decks that is not impacted by it at all. And Zach opting to play a lot of Path to the Peak in his deck. We do see Diego also playing Path to the Peak, but that's more of a tech card where you play it down and try to disrupt your opponent. Right now, it's really messing with him, but we do find that second Marshadow. So we're going to see some Underworld doors, and we'll see just how much energy Diego can get into play this turn.
And we do see that Alcremie V, the 1/1 Alcremie VMAX, kind of become a staple inclusion in the Shadow Rider deck. Some players do choose not to play it, but overall it can be a game-swinging card, specifically against VMAX decks. And we see Diego go ahead and bench that Alcremie, and I think we'll probably see a Gmax Whisk later on in this game if things go Diego's way.
Definitely, yeah. Now, I don't think Diego can get a knockout on this VMAX this turn. I think the most energy he can get up to is 9, which is going to be short of a knockout on this VMAX. So right now it feels like Zach might have the advantage in this prize trade. Diego did get the first knockout, but that one prize card really isn't going to matter as long as Zach doesn't bench another Pokemon. You know, there's just 2 VMAX he has to get through, and there's 5 prize cards, so knocking out that Drizzile won't do anything to help you win, whereas Zach, you know, he got the first hit, and I think, like you said, Chip, it's going to come down to, will we see that Alcremie VMAX at some point get a one-hit knockout to turn the tide in this game?
Could be a factor indeed. Diego does find the switching card, the Air Balloon, here to try to save that Shadow Rider on the bench, not only trying to prevent Zach from taking the 3 prize KO, but also saving those energies in play, which is vital to boost the damage output of both Max Geist and G Max Whisk. We see just a little short of picking up the KO. And yeah, I mean, at this point, Zach can pretty well play around having to put another Sobble in play. He's got everything he needs as far as supporters pretty much, you know, as long as you can maybe find a boss's orders a little later on. It's obviously nice to get Sobble down so you have access to your deck a little bit better with the Shady Dealings, but like you mentioned, maybe wanting to avoid doing that in this specific instance.
Yeah, and I think the hard thing is just, can you dodge the Alcremie VMAX at some point? That's going to be kind of the difference maker in this, where both sides have been, you know, trading 2-hit potential knockouts. But once you get that Gmax Whisk into play, you just wipe out a VMAX in one attack. Sure, it costs you a lot of energy, but as long as you can refill with Underworld Door, you can do it again. Just knock out 2 straight VMAXs and win the game. So we'll see what happens here as the game gets kind of into the closing turns here.
Yeah, it looks like Zach will go ahead and bench another Sobble. Does have the scoop up net, so, you know, if Diego does ever decide to target those down, or if it ever becomes a lose condition for Zach right at the end of the game where, you know, Diego has just 1 prize card remaining, that scoop up net is a great bailout option. Zach only playing 1 copy of that card, and it can definitely come in clutch for those specific scenarios, and also allows you to reutilize the Shady Dealings ability. And there it is. The Alcremie VMAX is now the time, Kyle. Will we see that Gmax Whisk?
Yeah, I don't think you need to this turn. With boss's orders in hand, you can go after the damaged Ice Rider Calyrex VMAX on the bench, get your 3 prize cards, and then say, okay, I'm gonna Gmax Whisk you next turn, so what are you gonna do about that?
Yeah, and there's really not much Zach can do. Boss's orders is an option, but Max Lance caps out at 250 damage. You can't, like, overload energy and discard another energy for 120 more damage, so it's gonna be a pretty good position here for Diego. Is debating the boss's orders. Let's see if he goes with it, and he does choose to. Brings up that heavily damaged Shadow Rider, and Max Geist will easily be able to finish this off, and Gmax Whisk is just waiting to close this game out.
Indeed. So 3 prize cards taken here. Right now, looking like Shadow Rider Calyrex is the better one in the Battle of the Calyrex, but we'll see. But yeah, that All Creamy VMAX, a card that really didn't see much play when it first came out. I think everybody looked at it and said, wow, this could be really powerful. We've seen stuff like, Blacephalon GX in the past with similar styles of attacks. And if you can get enough energy in play, yeah, it's going to knock stuff out. But until Shadow Rider Calyrex VMAX came out, we didn't have that kind of energy acceleration for Psychic type Pokemon. Now that it's here, you can see just how strong it is. It can do, well, hundreds and hundreds of damage. And I don't know if there's anything Zach can really do about it.
Yeah, gonna go ahead and play the boss's orders, bring up this Dedenne, and maybe this means we could see Zach go for a stall play. Could try to set up and start spreading damage here with the Inteleon here. Aqua Bullet, I believe, being that attack, dealing 120 and then 20 to some benched Pokemon, but yeah, just gonna actually hit for 10 damage here. Kind of an interesting line, but Diego only needing an energy to retreat. We see it ready in hand. Dedenne GX can move to the bench, and Alcremie VMAX's G-Max Whisk will deal tons of damage to close this game out.
We'll see how much he discards. Do you think he'll discard all of them?
Oh, you got to go with all of them every single time. Math is hard. It's enough. Might as well just
got the
discard.
Second line.
10. Oh, 10.
That's 600 damage.
Oh my goodness. So much damage. More than enough to pick up the KO and award Diego the win here in game number 1. Zach already on the back foot in this best of 3 set.
It's always amazing when you get to the second line of energy you're going to discard. It doesn't even fit in the graphic.
Yeah, it doesn't happen that often. 11 energy would just be out of this world. Maybe we'll see that happen at some point. But man, yeah, it seems like Shadow Rider, the stronger Calyrex so far. But Zach going to try to fight back. This matchup is definitely one that can go either way. And it's kind of become a staple matchup of this format because both of these decks are so popular. And so it's great to see the perspective of two amazing players trying to play this one out.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, Diego did go first in that game. Zach had a rough start, didn't get an attack off on his second turn. Sometimes that's all the difference, right? Ice Rider Calyrex VMAX is a deck that needs to build momentum, attack quickly, because it really only has one mode, right? It just attack, and it's limited on that damage output. So you need to do attacks quickly in every turn, whereas the Shadow Rider deck can build up a bunch of energy, get one-hit knockouts, and has kind of bigger comeback potential that way. So we'll see if that changes up in the second game.
Yeah, here we go. Game number 2. Zach needing to win 2 games here to remain in the winner's bracket. Of course, this is a double elimination tournament, so there is always the opportunity to make a run if you do lose, unfortunately. But Zach here is going to win the flip and will go ahead and get to choose to go first.
Indeed, and we'll see if Zach's start is a little better in the second game. Had that really rough Marnie in the first game. Didn't get to attack on turn 2. And Diego, even through that path to the peak that Zach had in play, was able to set up thanks to Marshadow's resetting whole ability and just got everything going. So let's see how this one goes. But I don't like that opening hand if I'm Zach.
Yeah, it's got some good cards in it, supporters, abilities to get Sobbles in play, but missing key things, no energy to attach, and of course, no Ice Rider V to attach those energy to. And now Diego here in a great spot, has research in hand, has a couple of quick balls, could just flood the board with Shadow Rider Calyrex Vs. We could see the Gengar Mimikyu play on turn 1, but you mentioned in game number 1, that is a potential huge liability. So I don't necessarily expect Diego to go with it, but let's see what kind of line he tries to set up.
Yeah, you really don't want to give your opponent a 3-prize knockout that they can get in one attack. And since Ice Rider Calyrex VMAX can't hit for 250, the Gengar and Mimikyu is just not worth it, I don't think. Even though you can kind of steal a turn, I think ultimately it just ends up being a liability more than anything. But yeah, this is a brutal start for Zach again. Even if you don't get an energy attachment on the first turn, the important thing is just getting the Ice Rider Calyrex V onto your bench. You can make up for the energy attachment in a future turn with that Melanie, but with no V down, that means you're not going to get a VMAX on turn 2. You're not going to get an attack. Yeah, just rough.
Definitely. Diego going to go ahead and play the Professor's Research. Does lose two pretty key cards. Boss's Orders, an excellent way to close out games. And then, of course, losing a Shadow Rider, Calyrex V, but has the opportunity to potentially get that back later on. I believe does play the two copies, actually, of the Ordinary Rod. So we'll still have access to those. And then can also go ahead and get Marshadow down, that resetting hole ability. Super key to bounce that Path to the Peak, which we've talked about plenty, is just such a key card for Zach. In Zach's deck in general, but also in this matchup specifically.
Yeah, it's funny to see almost a cycle of history repeating itself. Just a couple years ago, Power Plant was the big stadium to counter Mewtwo and Mew GX decks and force people to play Marshadow so that you would have an insurance policy against Power Plant. Now we see kind of the new incarnation of Power Plant with Path to the Peak, and we see players going back to that same strategy. Oh, okay, I need to put Marshadow in my deck.
We do see the level ball, a pretty good top deck from Zach as well, finds that Ice Rider a turn too late, but can at least guarantee this attachment now. A turn behind at the start, though, especially when you finally, get to go first, is pretty unfortunate. But Capacious Bucket could be the grab here. Go ahead and get that energy attachment. And even with something like a Research, could go ahead and get an energy in the discard pile so that Melanie is activated for future turns.
Yeah, this is, I think, one of the limitations of this Ice Rider Calyrex VMAX deck, though. It's very similar to Victini VMAX, where if you don't get that quick start, you don't build up that momentum, it really struggles. Like, there's realistically nothing you're going to be able to do this turn, right? You can hit with Ice Rider Calyrex V's first attack for like 40. That's really not what you want to be doing. There's no threat of like a burst damage here. There's no slowing your opponent down with Gengar and Mimikyu GX. You just kind of take what you get, and, well, if you don't get off to a good start, your opponent gets to run their plan without much resistance.
Zach really had a hard time deciding what to take there off the Shady Dealings. Does eye up the Marnie, wants to save some of those key cards in hand, and does get himself a Water Energy to attach at least, and has Scoop Up Net to reset the Drizzle. That's probably going to be what he wants to do on the next turn, and maybe we'll see that Quick Ball go ahead and grab another Sobble here, so that if this active Sobble goes down, there is still a Sobble to evolve into Drizzle.
Definitely. But yeah, Zach doing pretty much what he wanted to do on the first turn, which is get down an Ice Rider Calyrex V, attach energy to it, and set up for an attack on the next turn. This is going to be a huge turn for Diego. This is kind of the huge moment for this Shadow Rider Calyrex VMAX deck. How many can you get into play? How many Underworld Door abilities can you use in the same turn? We're going to kick things off with one, drawn two cards, and not very impressive.
Yeah, not an excellent hand here, but Diego does have the Quick Ball. At least that's an option to go ahead and grab the Dene GX to try to draw some cards. No Path to the Peak in play for Zach. The question here is, though, I mean, you're discarding a lot of solid cards, losing, a Switch. We saw that come up in the last game, trying to protect a Shadow Rider. Losing another Marshadow could be tough here. So Diego might just kind of play it a little slow here. And maybe the Dene GXs could be prized, Kyle?
Oh, wow. Yeah, I'm not sure. I didn't check that when Diego was looking through his deck the first time. Yeah, this is a somewhat awkward spot. He's going to play the Quick Ball, and yeah, they're both prized. That is extremely unfortunate for Diego. Not one, but two prized. That, you hate to see it.
Yeah, I mean, if you're playing a one of, you expect it to happen from time to time, but both copies of the card being in the prizes, come on, man, this is not supposed to happen. But unfortunately for Diego, that is the case, and just has to pass the turn. And now Zach maybe has an opening, Kyle, to get back in this one. If he can get an attack off this turn, start to power up that Ice Rider Calyrex VMAX and get a Path to the Peak in play as well, this turn could really swing the game back into Zach's favor.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, Diego's just in full top deck mode, right? He's got no supporters. He doesn't have an energy to even use Underworld Door. This is the big opening that Zach needed. He essentially skipped his first turn, but Diego kind of had a hiccup on his second turn. And now we are going to see another Drizzile. We have the Ice Rider Calyrex VMAX and Energy. All we need is a switching card, and we could see Zach attack into this Marshadow if he wants.
Zach playing just the one copy of Air Balloon, thankfully in the deck, not in the prizes, and is going to be able to move this Drizzile to the bench. And yeah, has everything else that he needs to get off the attack here. And will be able to pick up the knockout with Ride of the High King, finds the path to the peak, does not have to discard any energy. This is a great looking spot here for Zach, and also got to just take a moment to appreciate how sick of a name Ride of the High King is for an attack.
Yeah, it's fitting for Calyrex.
Absolutely.
Sitting atop his steeds. But yeah, I think Zach just questioning, is it worth attacking into this Marshadow? He's going to say yes. It is one potential kind of counter stadium he might not have to worry about in the future, and picks up a prize card. So if Diego ever does put down a Dedenne GX somehow, that could change the math on how many knockouts he needs. Now it does draw Psychic Energy for the turn, so we can see an Underworld door and draw 2 more cards, but it's just 2 cards. We'll see if he can draw into a supporter card off this.
I think debating playing this Ordinary Rod here, drawing into a Shadow Rider can kind of be an out, but you also need to draw into a Psychic Energy, so wisely going to hold off here. And finds a Quick Ball, which normally could bail you out, but with those Dedenne GX once again being in the prize cards, this is just so tough for Diego. And now Zach, after taking that knockout on Marshadow, can pick up a KO here on a regular Shadow Rider Calyrex V, and then only has to knock out 1 VMAX to close the game out.
Yeah, very awkward spot for Diego. Only 3 Psychic Energy in play, so Max Geist only going to do 100, and then you're probably not going to be able to do enough damage on the next turn to get a knockout. So he's just going to Quick Ball here, might as well thin out your deck. Grab the Marshadow in preparation for another path to the peak. And we'll see if he decides to go for the attack or if he just sends up kind of just something to get knocked out. But nope, gonna go with a Max Geist for 100 and hope that that's gonna be a relevant attack moving forward in the game.
Yeah, it could definitely come up. It's a lot easier to pick up this KO now. And Zach, with an interesting choice here, knows that Diego has not done pretty much anything for the last 2 turns. Has the path to the peak to put in play. Obviously, Diego has Marshadow there on the bench, but does Zach play this Marnie here, knowing that Diego has really not done much?
I can tell you what the answer should be. It should be no, don't play Marnie. But all right, he's going to go for it. Maybe deciding, all right, my opponent could top deck into something big, and I'm going to be in an awkward spot. So just going to go for the Marnie, try to build on the lead he has, just make sure he gets more energy in play, finds Inteleon. But yeah, I always hesitate when your opponent clearly has a bad hand and you have something like a Marnie or N or whatever. Kind of bailing them out is always dangerous.
Definitely, but Zach here going ahead with that route. I think the thought process, like you mentioned, is, you know, Diego really does just need like 1 good top deck, and he's right back in this game. So Zach wants to make sure that if that happens, he's got energy ready to go and has an opportunity to kind of climb back in this game, especially since Diego does already have that Marshadow on the bench to bump this path to the peak. And speaking of which, resetting hold discards that stadium right away. Underworld door now active with a couple Psychic Energies in hand. Diego looking for some help here.
Yeah, we'll see just how many extra Psychic Energy he can get into play. Just 1 so far, doesn't find another Shadow Rider. And you got to think with those 2 Dedenne GX prized, going to be hard for him to combo together a big turn here. And yeah, doesn't even find another Shadow Rider Calyrex VMAX on this turn. This is going to be a rough one. Can only Max Geist for, what, 160, which is very much short of the knockout.
Just gonna be short. Even if Diego, I think the math is still just 1 energy short of getting the KO regardless. So, I mean, Diego would have been able to at least attack with a clean Shadow Rider, but it's going to be tough for Diego to claw back in this one. And Zach's looking in a good position here to try to send it to a game number 3. Diego does draw into the Path to the Peak. Not super relevant in this spot. Zach does have like the Dedenne GX in his list to draw cards. Actually, no, not even playing the Dedenne GX. Most players opting to play it in their Ice Rider list. Zach saying, hey, I don't want that liability in my deck. And yeah, so Path to the Peak, truly just a useless card for Diego in this matchup.
Yep, we are going to see the Max Geist hit for a solid chunk of damage. And this does put Zach in a potentially awkward spot because I think, like you said, he only has that one switching card, that one air balloon. Normally in this spot, you would love to retreat away your damaged VMAX and set up a fresh one so it doesn't give your opponent an easy knockout on the following turn. But in this situation, is forced to Melanie as the supporter card for the turn in order to get an attack off and has to attack with the active. So this is not over yet. If Diego is able to evolve both of those V into VMAX next turn, Zach won't have an easy path to victory on the following turn, but it's going to take a lot from Diego.
The math works out excellently here for Zach. Perfect math to just go ahead and use Ride of the High King. Save these energy in play. You're assuming Diego is going to take this knockout, but no reason to discard those energy if you don't have to. That can open up some plays for Diego to go for things like Boss's Orders, where otherwise those options would not be available. And Diego was one card away from finding the out to the Shadow Rider Calyrex VMAX to draw some more cards here, but we'll go ahead and find that piece. Zach did miss on getting another Path to the Peak in play, so Underworld Door is active. Diego will be able to draw some cards.
Yeah, this is still going to be a close finish, I think. It depends on how good this turn is going to be for Diego. Clearly, he'll get the knockout, go down to 3 prize cards. And then the question is, can he follow up with a second knockout on the Ice Rider Calyrex VMAX? It's not going to be easy, but I guess it's potentially possible.
Yeah, the key card I think here is Diego's 1 copy of Reset Stamp. If Diego can find that card, puts Zach to just 2 cards in hand. With Zach already having multiple Driziel in play, it would slow Zach down. Doesn't find it here, but finds a couple of energy to accelerate. 2 cards. Is there a Reset Stamp? Ooh. No, not yet, Kyle, but Evolution Incense can get 1 more Shadow Rider, and that's 2 more cards we could see.
Yeah, I think that was the big card to draw here. You need to evolve this into a VMAX, otherwise Zach just plays Boss's Orders, knocks out the V, and the game's over. Getting to this VMAX makes it so Zach can't win the game next turn, and that's huge. That's keeping Diego in this game.
We will see the Max Geist will pick up the KO. Diego just 1 VMAX knockout away from being able to close out the game. Earlier on in the game, Diego chose to discard the Alcremie V off of a Quick Ball over the Gengar Mimikyu. That would be something that would be risky to put in play in this spot, but maybe maybe Alcremie VMAX is your only way to pick up a 1-hit KO on the next turn.
Yeah, that's certainly possible. It does look like Zach's going to be in position to win this game, but it's not over by any means. Like you said, if Diego can pull off some big play with a Reset Stamp, potentially he prevents Zach from winning. But let's see what Zach can put together here.
He's going to play the Melanie. That's a great start. Get yourself some energy acceleration. You could even stack an additional energy on the Ice Rider that's already a VMAX and already has more damage on it, or excuse me, more energy on it, so that, you know, you can discard multiple energies multiple turns in a row. But Zach's going to go ahead and just set up the second VMAX to potentially be able to pivot between those 2 attacking options in case this game does go for multiple turns longer. And Zach's, I mean, in a great spot. Got the Inteleon here, got the Sobble. I almost wonder if you've got everything you need for this turn. Maybe you hold off on evolving this Inteleon so that if you do get Reset Stamp, that's an out in your deck. Oh no, still 1 key card I think Zach wanted to find here, that Path to the Peak.
Yeah, I think that's worth going for.
Yeah, for sure.
But that's a good point. I mean, I don't know how much Path to the Peak even really matters here. I don't think Diego can get a knockout. But you know what? If you're going to Reset Stamp plus Path to the Peak, you're pretty much going to guarantee yourself a win here, I think.
Yeah, I mean, Diego does have that Marshadow on the bench, so maybe it's just not necessarily worth going for at this spot, but it does force Diego to use it. And if this game does last multiple more turns, maybe you do stick a path in the late game, but you've kind of used this one big turn of stamp plus path to the peak here, and now it's, you know, kind of, it's path is still good later on, but it's a lot weaker when it's not combined with reset stamp.
Definitely, yeah. I think Zach's just trying to do anything he can to say, all right, how can I lose this game? Are there any cards I can play out so I don't redraw them? And it looks like he's just going to go for Ride of the High King. This is a little risky. I guess not. It still adds up perfectly, right? When you can max Lance on the next turn. So yeah, it's just going to come down to, oh, we see the reset stamps actually in the discard already for Diego. So Zach might be thinking, all right, I don't think my opponent has any way to disrupt my hand. There's no way I get knocked out here. I guess there is one play Diego could pull off. If he's able to find Boss's Orders, he could Boss's Order something out in Horror House GX to buy a turn, to potentially get more energy in play, and then get the win that way. That's probably his only option at this point.
Now that's a reasonable out to go for, honestly. Does have the boss in deck, needs to draw it here off the Underworld door. Also does have the Dene GX now, can put that down to dig for that play. And that might be the only line that Diego can find here. It might be the only way for Diego to maybe find a way back into this one, but still would need so many energy in play to pick up this one-hit knockout. There's the boss's orders though, Kyle.
Yeah, I think that Ice Rider Calyrex VMAX on the bench only has one energy on it, so you can bring that out. Use Horror House GX, so then you have that VMAX stuck in the active for the next turn. You prevent your opponent from playing any cards. They can't attach to retreat. They can't attack. Ooh, is Diego finding a sneaky way out of this game?
You would need, I think, 11 energy in play to get the KO with Max Geist, which is so many energy. And at this point in the game, I don't even know how many energy Diego has access to, but is going to be able to draw the extra cards as well with Horror House.
Yeah, he put 2 back in his deck with the Ordinary Rod as well. So here we go, Horror House GX. He's got 8 energy in play. If he can find 3 more, he just wins if he can switch to the bench.
Yeah, and has Air Balloon and Switch in the hand. So with the Research in hand and the energy already, and 5 cards left in deck, as long as there are 3 energy in the deck, the game should actually just be guaranteed here for Diego. Gonna go ahead and debate attach or Underworld door. It's gonna be the Underworld door first, just needing to find 1 more energy here, Kyle. And there it is, from seemingly a terrible position. Diego found a path back into this game, fighting around the path to the peaks from Zach. And there it is, Max Geist. A game that Diego was down 6-2 prizes. He finds a way and hits the perfect KO here, 340 damage. Diego moves on here in the 25th Anniversary Invitational.
Incredible finish and an incredible line of play from Diego. We've seen it time and time again from him. If there's a way to sneak out a victory, he'll figure it out, and he does it again. And Chip, I guess so far this is just the day of weird GX attacks that don't let your opponent do stuff, leading to victories.
Yeah, I mean, buying a turn is a big deal. If your opponent, you know, whiffs on a turn or bricks for a turn, that usually can buy you back into the game. But whenever you can use an attack that intentionally does those things, that's also a great path to try to find victory. Extremely well played from Zach there in the second game. I think, yeah, obviously had some bad draws there in game number 1, but you know, Diego was just able to find the route to victory. And, you know, we talked about how Gengar Mimikyu was not good early game, but could come up in the late game. And that's exactly what happened there in that game.
Yeah, it's such an annoying card to play against because you have to protect yourself kind of from all angles. At any point in the game, if one thing is left open, your opponent can take advantage and kind of lock you in place for a turn and steal back the momentum, and we saw exactly that happen there. Diego got exactly enough energy in play to get the victory.
We've had two amazing matches to start the show off. I'm excited for what the rest of this weekend has in store, Kyle. If it's anything like those last two games, I mean, this tournament we already knew was going to be incredible. And, you know, I'm excited to see this next specific match going to be kind of the highlight in my mind of round number 1. Robin Scholes going up against Azul Garcia Griego, two of the players just at the absolute top of their game right now over the past few years, both of them winning multiple tournaments. And, you know, we're going to get to know Robin a little bit better here.